Alright guys, this video is going over the comparing and ordering check-in that you took last Friday. You could have also taken it on 9/3. So 9/3 or 9/4, you took this check-in. This is great practice and great review before your quiz tomorrow. So if you want to open your check-in so that you can review the answers with me, that'd be great. If not, just pay attention as we go through. So first 3 questions just ask you your name and then your class period. And then question number 4 said, what is the opposite of -22? So remember, on a number line, if I'm at, there's 0, this is 2, your opposite is the number that is the same distance away from 0, just on the opposite side. So the opposite of -22 would be +22. Number 5 says the absolute value of 3. So remember, those 2 straight lines on the outside of the number mean absolute value. Absolute value is just the distance a number is from 0. So if you think about a number line, if this is 0, 1, 2, 3, well, the number 3 is 1, 2, 3 places away from 0. So that means the absolute value of 3 is 3, which is letter B. Number 6 said the opposite of the absolute value of -75. So remember, it looks like a little negative symbol, but we read that as the opposite of. So do inside your absolute value first. So the absolute value of -75 is 75. And then the opposite of it, which is the symbol out here. So the opposite of 75 is -75. So your answer should have been A. Number 7 is a little word problem. It says Lindsay borrowed $20 from her mom. She owes her mom blank dollars. And when we talk about owe, remember, we don't say we owe -20. We owe $20. Owe is already a negative keyword that we have to use a positive value to express. So the answer would be 20. Number 8 asks you to compare the following 2 numbers. So when you're comparing numbers, you want to work with decimals. So -0.7 is already in decimal form. That can stay that way. -3.8, we have -3/8. We have to convert into a decimal. So the way we do that is to divide. So 3 divided by 8. 8 can't go into 3, so put a decimal, put a 0. 8 goes into 30 3 times, because 3 times 8 is 24. 30 minus 24 is 6. Add a 0, drop a 0. 8 goes into 60 7 times, because 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract, left with a 4. Add a 0, drop a 0. 8 goes into 40 5 perfect times. 40 minus 40 is 0. So as a decimal, -3/8 is -0.375. Okay, now when we're comparing these 2 numbers, we have to remember that the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So in this case, normally, if we had 0.7 and 0.375, normally we would say, okay, 0.7 is bigger. But because they're negatives, we have to think backwards. So in this case, -0.7 is less than -0.375. So when you're comparing these 2 numbers, our -3/8 is greater than -0.7. So your correct answer should have been B. Number 10 was comparing 2 numbers again. 0.3 is already in decimal form, so we just need to change 1/3 into a decimal. So use your division. 1 divided by 3 3 can't go into 1, so we put a 0, put a decimal. 3 goes into 10 3 times, because 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract, left with a 1, add a 0, drop a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times, and we notice a pattern, right? We're just going to keep getting 1 and then a 3 up top, which means this is going to be a repeating decimal. So remember, we use that bar notation, that little line above my number telling me that's going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. So the two numbers I'm now comparing are 0.33 repeating and 0.3. Okay, so I like to go number by number. I have a 0 and a 0. Oh, gotta keep going. I have a 3 and a 3. Gotta keep going. I have a 3, and technically after this 3 is a 0, which means 3 is greater than 0. So back up at the top, 1/3 is greater than 0.3. So B should have been your answer. Alright, number 12 is putting the following numbers in order from least to greatest. Okay, so they give us 4 numbers: -1, 0.1, -1/10, and the absolute value of -2.1. So we need to first make sure that -1/10 we turn into a decimal. Okay, well, -1/10. A couple ways we can do it. We can think about our place value. 1/10 would be 0.1, right? The way we read that would be 1/10. If you don't just know that off of what you know about place value, you can always use division. So we can do 1 divided by 10. 10 can't go into 1, so we put a 0, put a decimal, and 10 goes into 10 one perfect time, and we get our same decimal. Okay, so -1/10 as a decimal, would be -0.1. And then we need to talk about absolute value of -2.1. Well, absolute value just asks about distance. So what is the distance of -2.1 from 0? It's just 2.1. Okay, so now when I put them in order, starting with my least number, remember, the greater the negative, the smaller the number. So my smallest number here is actually -1. So -1 would be my smallest. Next, I only have one other negative, which is -0.1. But remember, you want to write it how they originally gave it to you, which was -1/10. And then we have 0.1 and we have 2.1. Well, 0.1 is smaller than 2.1. And then our greatest number is the absolute value of -2.1. So our final answer would be C. Last but not least, number 14 asks us to put these numbers in order from greatest to least. So a couple of these we have to look at before we can put them in order. We need to do 9/10. Well, we need to change that into a decimal. Again, you can use your place value, what you know about place value, and 9/10 is written as 0.9, right? That 9's in the 10th place. If you didn't know that, you could also still use your division and do 9 divided by 10. 10 can't go into 9. Put a 0, put a decimal, and then 10 goes into 99 whole times perfectly, and you end up with the same decimal. Okay, so 9/10 as a decimal would just be 0.9. Next, the opposite of -9. Remember, parentheses are not absolute value. We just need to take the opposite of -9, which would be +9. And then our last one is the opposite of the absolute value of negative 9. So first things first, the absolute value of negative 9 is 9, and then take the opposite of 9 would be negative 9. So now we have all of our numbers where we can compare them. Okay, we're looking for our greatest first. So our greatest number in this case would be 9.9. Next would be positive 9, but remember we need to write it how they originally gave it to us, which was the opposite of negative 9. Next is 0.9, but we have to write it how they gave it to us, which is 9 over 10 as a fraction. And then our smallest number would be negative 9, which is the opposite of the absolute value of negative 9. So the correct answer here should have been A.